So we're rolling. Very important for you to always keep eye contact.
All right. So you want my name and number?
No. So listen. So first of all, today is the 22nd of December 2014, and we are with Maurice Ostroff. Is that correct? Did I pronounce the last name right?
Correct.
Ostroff?
Ostroff.
Ostroff. And we are at your residence in
Beit Protea.
Beit Protea, which is a
South African retirement home.
Okay, I didn't know that it was South African. Maurice, how do you spell your name in Hebrew? Mem?
Mem Vav Ret
Yud
Samach.
Samach. And your last name?
Aleph Vav Samach.
Aleph Vav Samach.
Tet Resh Vav Pei Sofit.
Ostroff. Maurice Ostroff. Okay, and today is
And in English I spell it M-A-U.
M-A-U, okay. And today's the 12th, 14th. And this is our first meeting with our interview. And I'd like you to introduce yourself to me.
My name is Maurice Ostroff.
Where were you born?
I was born in Johannesburg, in a suburb called Mayfair, in the year 1925.
The year 1925.
Which makes me 89 years old now.
89 years old. Wow, it's amazing. Tell me a little bit about your family's background and history. Where are your family roots from?
My parents, Zichronov Livracha, came from Lithuania. And they married in Johannesburg in 1910.
And where were they from in Lithuania? Were they both from Lithuania?
Both from Lithuania.
Were they both immigrants from Lithuania to South Africa?
Beg your pardon?
They were both immigrants?
Yeah.
Do you know anything about their families back in the old country? Back in Lithuania, where they're from, occupation?
Well, we have an interesting... are we on sound now? Or can
Yes, we are.
Well, if you turn it off... if you turn off the recording...
Okay.
And then we can record afterwards. My father came from a town called Birch.
Okay.
And one of his relations, we're not too sure who, was a rabbi who subsequently went to Sweden. But I'd rather leave that part out. It's a history that I'm not too sure of. I'm very vague about it.
It doesn't matter.
His name was Rabbi Theodor Ostroff, who was buried in Jerusalem. Through part of the family came to Israel. One son went to Australia and became a rabbi, to New Zealand, changed his surname to Astor. He was Rabbi Astor, chief rabbi of one of the big towns in... I'm too vague about this, it won't come out nicely at all.
Okay.
Please erase it.
Let's talk about more about your parents.
Right.
Their names, where they were from, what their occupations were, what they did.
How important is it all?
Just to get a little background. That's it, you know, just... Yeah.
All right, well, I come from a family of 6 children. I was the youngest of 6. I'm the last survivor. During World War II, I joined the South African Army and learned radar, as a result of which I was able to become part of the radar community in 1948 in Israel.
But before we get to the radars and the World War II, I would like to interview you also about your upbringing in South Africa, if you were active in any Zionist movements when you were growing up, if you were brought up in a Zionistic house, in a religious house, you know, a little bit about your background. It's very important before you jump right into the radars, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And again, this is all, and you know, I think it's very important because a lot of people, you know, as I'm interviewing the South African Machal members, I'm realizing that most of them are Lithuanians, which a lot of people don't know. That's not known. So anything that you can tell me about your upbringing in Johannesburg as a Jewish person, as a Jewish kid, anything that happened, Mr. Tapperson and Joe Wolf told me a lot about some anti-Semitism that they had to deal with sometimes, growing up in the youth movement. This is the kind of things that, and then we'll slowly, we're going to go chronologically. So.
Well, you're making me think.
Okay, that's good. That's what I'm supposed to do.
You're going to do a lot of editing, I hope.
None of this is edited.
Hmm?
None of this is edited. It's not edited. This is all for research. This is probably not going to be aired anywhere. This all goes into an archive.
How far back do you want me to go? What?
Well,
the day I was conceived?
No. I would like to know what kind of house you were brought up in. Was it a religious home? Was it a Zionistic home? Was it a non-Zionistic home? Were your parents members of some sort of organization, like a Jewish Federation or Beitar or this or that, you know? What kind of house were you brought up in?
You know, I think most people, when they describe the early lives, embellish a lot and paint it as they would like to have been. I don't remember a hell of a lot of my childhood, except that I went to Cheder.
Okay.
All the naughty things I know I learned in Cheder.
Yeah.
Because we used to meet outside, you know, before going into class with all the naughty boys. I became a member of Faudem.
Okay.
Not a very active member, but I was a member.
Can you explain to me exactly what Faudem is?
A big one?
Faudem. Can you explain to me a little bit what it is, a little bit of...
I thought you knew about the Faudem movement, which was a youth movement established in South Africa by Norman Lurie, who was then a filmmaker, by the way. And it was basically a Zionist youth movement. It encouraged a lot of awareness of the Zionist ambition, and I think gave us a lot of inspiration and friendship. I can't, there's not much I can elaborate about it, except that I participated in most of their functions.
That's fine. You said that you were the youngest out of 5 children.
Out of 6.
Out of 6.
Mm-hmm.
Out of 6 children. What was your parents' occupation in South Africa?
My late father was a businessman.
Okay.
And my mother was a mother of a lot of kids.
A lot of kids. So did you wear a yarmulke when you were growing up?
No, we were not a religious. We were an observant family, typically South African. Mm-hmm. My father worked on Shabbat.
Okay.
As most semi-Orthodox Jews did. We went to shul by car. As I grew up and lived in a more affluent suburb, we went to synagogue by car on Friday night. The rabbi knew that we did that. we were very friendly with the rabbi, and he'd rather we came by car than not come at all.
Of course.
I think most Americans do the same.
Absolutely. What kind of businessman was your father? Was he like in?
He established a builders material and plumbing supplies business, which grew very rapidly. With the aid of my brothers, they participated to a great extent. I was too young to participate in it.
So your parents were married in 1910.
Yeah.
You were born in 1925, and in those 15 years, you had all your previous brothers and sisters were born.
Right.
You're the youngest, Ben
Correct.
Skunim,
Correct.
as we say in Hebrew, right? Ben Skunim. Yeah. Do you remember? Let's see. If you're born in 1925, I'm sure one of the biggest memories that you remember of is growing up as a child. Did you guys have like the tzedakah box in the house?
Well, we always had the blue box in the house. That was standard in every Jewish house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. I don't remember the day of my birth, but I do know that my father was busy making wine for Pesach at the time, and that's why they called me Moshe, but it became Maurice in South Africa. Yeah,
it became Maurice. So your Hebrew name is Moshe. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just this focus is running away from me. Just a second. So, and what is the date of your birth?
February 22, 1925.
February 22nd, 1925. Okay. In your household, any talk of Zionism, you know, Palestine, you know what I'm saying?
No, not to a great extent.
Okay.
My mother was chairlady of the local branch of Women's Mizrahi there, but we didn't have much discussion about Zionism in the house.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm just going to stop for a sec.
It's not flowing well.
Okay, so we're gonna, you know,
No,
it's okay. We'll get into our thing.
Okay. You're a good interviewer, by the way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So you grew up in. So your mother is active in
The Women's Mizrahi. Yeah.
Mizrahi is also, it's a movement of
religious Zionism.
And your house is a kosher house, I take it?
Absolutely
Absolutely.
kosher.
You guys
Yeah.
keep kosher?
Sure.
Okay, very good. Celebrating all holidays, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Do you remember when the first time that you hear the word Palestine?
When I joined Habonim.
How old were you when you joined Habonim? Around, roughly?
Around 11 or 12.
Okay. So this is the late 1930s. This
Right.
is in the Habonim movement in Johannesburg. What do they do? Do they because they don't teach you about Judaism because you already come from a house where you know about Judaism. But what do they do there? Like what's the protocol?
Basically, I think it was a form of social meeting, but all built around the Zionist idea. We learned about Herzliya, we learned about Jabotinsky, we learned about our Rosh Gedud would gin up on it in advance. I don't know if you know, but the protocol in Habonim was everybody made a brick of cardboard for our initiation. Do you know about that? Have you heard of it? Out of cardboard we made a cardboard brick, and this was our brick to establish the homeland in Palestine. That's why it was called Habonim, the builders. This was a symbolic ceremony we had at the initiation.
Okay. Was it, did you go there with a lot of friends, or did you meet a lot of friends there, or was it was also very, like you said, a very social thing, organization?
It was, so I went there with friends, obviously, and we'd have our occasional swimming competition, sports competition, chagiga, as they called it.
Any incidents in your childhood of anti-Semitism, anything that you witnessed? I'm not going to, we're not talking about the war yet. We'll get to that.
No, as a kid I experienced a milder form of anti-Semitism as a child at primary school, and there was a stage where we used to encounter antagonism from anti-Semitic kids who would come to provoke us, with the adult bully standing in the background. So if one reacted to the kids' provocation, then the bullies would come out. So we used to prepare ourselves, and we actually overcame it.
Do you remember one of these incidents?
It would happen quite regularly in a certain area, in a particular area.
Of Johannesburg? Of
Johannesburg, yeah. Of the suburb where we lived in, which was Mayfair.
And would it be just children being children, or was it more?
I don't think it was deep seated.
Okay.
No, I don't think so at all. I'll mention later a serious anti-Semitic incident at university, but much later.
We'll get to that soon. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that soon. Tell me a little bit, like, so you're 11, 12, do you remember your bar mitzvah?
I remember my bar mitzvah, and immediately afterwards I took ill for over a year.
Wow.
I had typhoid fever.
Wow, okay.
And it was a serious illness. I was unconscious for 6 weeks, just after the age of 13, after bar mitzvah. And that kept me out of circulation for quite a while.
Typhoid fever. Is that correct? What's typhoid fever in Hebrew? Do you know what typhoid Hebrew?
A big one?
I'm trying to figure out what typhoid fever is in Hebrew.
It's hardly known today.
Yeah.
This was in the days before penicillin. Today with penicillin, it's hardly known.
Did this experience have any after effects?
Yes, I missed a year of schooling, and I made up for it by going to a Jewish day school for the 1 year, to do 2 years in one, but I don't want to elaborate on that.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So after you recovered from the typhoid fever, are you back to yourself, back to...
No, it took quite a time to recover, and then I insisted on going to, although by then we had moved to a more affluent suburb, I insisted on going to trade school rather than to a normal high school.
What's a trade school? Can you explain to me?
Trade school was actually meant for people who weren't going to go to university. We learned a trade. I learned the electrical trade. It was similar to Ort.
Okay. And this is high school, yeah?
This is high school.
8th grade, 9th grade.
Right.
Yeah.
I went there. That was the last 2 years of my schooling. I insisted on going there against my parents' desires because we had a very prestigious high school near us. But I thoroughly enjoyed it.
What did you study at trade school? What was your...
I did the electrical option. And subsequently I went on to university and studied electrical engineering.
Where did you go to university?
At what is known as WITS, W-I-T-S.
W-I-T-S.
It's an abbreviation for University of Witwatersrand.
Okay, and you studied electrical engineering.
Right.
Now, let's go back a second. When you graduate high school,
Mm-hmm.
There's already a world war going on.
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna. Where are you? Where's Maurice in 1939 when World War II breaks out?
I was in Durban the day war broke out.
In Durban?
On a holiday, yes. I remember distinctly.
September.
September.
Tell me about that.
We happened to be on holiday in Durban at the time, and I remember distinctly the announcement. September 3, I think it was, 1939. Was it the 1st?
Actually, it was the 3rd that the UK declared war.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. The Germans attacked Poland on the 1st, but on the 3rd, Britain entered the war with
Right.
South Africa and Australia.
Yeah, I
and
remember that very clearly because the son of the owner of the hotel was in the Navy, and he was called up immediately. It was a Jewish-owned hotel, a kosher hotel, a Carmel hotel, and their son was immediately called up to the Navy. I was then still recovering from my illness. I wasn't fully mobile yet.
So let's see, in 1939,
All right.
you are 14 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
Your arithmetic is good.
Thank you.
Better than mine.
But you remember it. You remember like that moment of the war breaking out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you didn't understand at the time the whole magnitude of it, but
we just knew it was some...
Now, did you also hear, like, before the war broke out, I'm sure your family still had, your mother and father still had family back in Lithuania. Is there any news getting out from there before the war about, do you remember anything?
I remember very clearly that my mother sold her jewelry in order to bring some relation out from Russia to Canada, because this particular relation, who I didn't know, I'd never met, had other family in Canada. And I remember my mother selling her jewelry in order to assist.
Wow. You remember that?
Yeah.
Did they tell you about it, or you saw it?
Well, it was spoken about in the family.
It was spoken about in the house.
Yeah.
And most of the war, you are in high school.
Correct.
Is that correct?
So 1943, I started university and immediately left and volunteered for the army.
Okay, we're going to get to that in a sec. To the South African Army.
The South African Army.
And you're 18.
Right.
Yeah, you're 18. You're right. You're perfect age. Right? 18
Right.
is the...
And it was a completely voluntary army. We had no conscription in South Africa.
Sure.
And I just felt it terribly important to participate in this.
Now, when you volunteer for the army, when you volunteer for the South African Army, do you already know what's going on in Europe with the Jews? Do we know what's happening?
Yes, we had a pretty good idea, and that's why I was motivated, because many German Jews had already arrived in South Africa as refugees. And these people were earning a living by doing things like buying clothes in suitcases and going house to house selling them, doing all sorts of things just to earn a living. And this created a big impression on me. And I learned from them what was happening in Germany.
So there was a lot of German Jews that came to South Africa?
Yes. Not an awful lot, but there were a good number. they restricted the immigration, but those who had some connection managed to come to South Africa.
And what would you hear from these people?
That terrible things were going on in, that they had run away from. And this, of course, was what...
42, 43?
Yeah. Made this... they had come earlier, of course, but I just got to know them then.
And in the house, anything spoken about this?
Yes, well, my parents would patronize these. Rather than go and buy in a shop, they would buy the articles that... The one in particular, I remember, used to come to our house with his suitcase of linens and
you guys used
odd
to buy
things.
from him. Yeah.
Right.
So you're 18 years old and you join the South African Army. You feel, do you join the army because of what you know what's happening in Europe with the Jews? Is that the main motivation?
I felt that I would never be able to live with myself if I didn't participate in some way towards this fight against the Nazis, which I'd learned a lot about.
Yeah.
And I'd read a lot about them.
Okay, so when you tell your parents that you're joining the army, let's go back a few steps. Are any of your brothers and sisters in the army?
No.
What do your parents say to you when you...
They were very much against it. In fact, if I have to be frank, I bluffed my age and I...
okay. How old did you tell them that you were?
I told them I was 21 because...
Is that when you had to be 21?
I had to be 21, and otherwise you needed your parents' consent.
Okay. My great uncle did that too in the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
So please, so how do you fake how do you do that? How do you fake your age?
They didn't ask for any proof. You filled in a form, what's your age, and I filled it. I grew a moustache.
You grew a moustache. Okay. Where are you taken? Where do you do your basic training?
Because I had spent a few months at university doing engineering, they put me into a unit called the Special Signal Services, which was developing radar in South Africa. And I did my initial training at the Bernard Price Institute of Geophysical Research, which had been taken over by the Army for radar purposes. And we did a short course there. So
the South African military immediately assigns you into the radar. Now, at this time in 1943, radar is very young. It's a very new thing. Is that correct?
It was hush-hush. It was, you didn't speak a lot about it.
And were you also told to be hush-hush?
Yes, absolutely. But South Africa developed they had already developed a extensive coastal command.
Just for the record, before the South African Army is under the wing of the British Army.
No.
They're part of the Commonwealth.
Part of the Commonwealth.
So they're fighting in the war alongside the British
in North Africa.
In North Africa. Mostly North Africa, right?
At that stage, North Africa, subsequently, not in the far. No, well, that came later.
Okay.
I'll tell you about that.
Okay. So they see that you studied electrical engineering.
Yeah, I knew very little about.
Yeah, but still, it's like they're not going to send you into the infantry. They're going to send you somewhere else. They know that you're a university kind of person.
And I'd had my trade school training, of course.
In high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're sent to this place.
Yeah.
Please continue.
And I became what they called a radar technician.
Okay.
I was assigned to Coastal Command originally.
I'm listening. I'm just writing down. Yeah.
Where the radar was used for anti-submarine detection.
Okay.
Because the German submarines were going around the South African coast at the time. And then I was sent up north for a very short while, but most of my service was in South Africa.
During the war?
During the war. And then after that I came back and completed my... I came back and did my first and second year.
Wait, I want to still continue with the Army. Like,
right.
In the Army, how long is the course that how long was that course that the radar course?
I guess it was about 4 months.
Okay.
I'm guessing now.
And after that, and what you're doing there is you're tracking German submarines that are going around the Cape, basically. Right. And was there any incidents? Did you have any?
Yes, there were a few. No subs sunk in our area, but we detected them and passed it on. It was a very elaborate system of filter rooms and passing information from around. I was in Meisner actually most of the time, and information would be localized in Cape Town, which is a considerable distance away. And we'd send the plots here, and they would send the Air Force out to sink the subs. I would occasionally go out on a flight from a nearby air station, air base in George, which also did the patrolling at that time. But these were rather primitive aircraft in those days. We used Ansons, and by comparison with what's available today, they were rather primitive.
Okay, but you know, that's compared to today. And after you finish your course, you're stationed down, like I said, near the Cape?
Yeah, I was sent up north to Egypt for a very short while.
To Egypt?
Yeah. That's where to Libya, where the fighting was on in the desert. The South Africans were then engaged in the desert warfare.
Tell me about that.
My part was insignificant. It was merely maintaining the radar equipment on the aircraft and on the ground.
How long were you in Egypt for?
I went up twice, probably about 3 or 4 months, not more.
Okay.
It was a very mild contribution.
Yeah, but still, I mean, were you up on the front? You were up on the front?
No, not really, no. No, I wasn't a combat soldier at all.
That I understand. That I understand, yeah.
And then towards the end of the war, of course, the war in Europe opened, and South Africa formed what it called its 6th Division, which fought in Italy.
With the British?
With the British and the Americans.
Okay.
But I didn't take part in that.
So why are you mentioning it?
I'm just giving you that history.
Okay,
yeah.
so they did see some action in Europe.
Yeah.
But most of the South African forces were in El Alamein and in those...
Yes, a lot of them were captured at Tobruk.
Yeah, Tobruk.
Yeah. I would like you to interview, as I mentioned, another chap who's here, who actually served in Italy at the time, and then he served in Machal afterwards.
Really? We're definitely gonna interview him. Absolutely.
He has some very interesting stories to tell you.
What's his name?
Leon Sarnak.
Perfect. We'll give him a ring after.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we'll give him a call on Wednesday, wouldn't we?
Mm-hmm. So basically, so how long are you in the army for, in the South African army altogether? You go in because it's a voluntarily army.
I was discharged in 1946. I joined in 43.
Yeah. I
remember very clearly that I was stationed at a place called Melkbosstrand on the day that victory was declared in Europe. It was VE Day. Now, in South Africa, the Afrikaans people, a lot of the Afrikaners, were very much in favour of Germany, and they hated the soldiers. And those of us who volunteered to serve abroad wore a red flash. It was actually an orange flash we wore to distinguish us as volunteers who had volunteered to serve abroad. And we were always the objects of derision and attacks by the extreme Afrikaners. But I remember very clearly VE night, because we were at this isolated place called Melkbosstraat, and we had a lot of farmers around us who were anti-war, anti-Britain.
Anti-Britain?
Yeah. But when the VE was declared, they came and made friends with us. And they invited us over to the farm.
Yeah.
We sat in the basement and we got drunk on their homemade wine.
Was it good?
Well, it was the only night I really got drunk, because they plied us with this liquor. But that was a night of friendship, you know, of overtures.
So the Afrikaners were really not, they did not like the British.
Well, there was the extreme right wing of the Afrikaners who were very anti-British and
pro-German.
And pro-German. I'll mention to you later that there used to be frequent meetings. When I came back, after leaving the army, I came back to Wits. I became an active anti-apartheid activist.
Okay.
The South African army during the war had blacks, but the blacks weren't treated equally in the South African army. There was even an apartheid in the army. And there was a section of South African troops who felt this was terribly immoral, and they provoked these blacks into demanding their rights. These chaps formed what was called the Springbok Legion. And after the war, the Springbok Legion became the first mass anti-apartheid, white anti-apartheid movement in the country. I became very much involved in it. In fact, the chairman of the Springbok Legion was the late uncle of our managing director here, Lynn Lockhoff,
okay.
the manager of Fabricators.
Okay.
Her uncle was the chairman of this group.
So is it in the army that you really, for the first time, experience?
I didn't experience anti-apartheid in the army.
No.
But these chaps did. And but I did join the movement afterwards, and I became active in it.
But apartheid doesn't come into effect in South Africa until 1948.
Oh no, it existed before.
It did?
Yes, absolutely before. It was just emphasized when the government came in 48, when Milan came in. But it had always existed. Jannie Smuts himself was, you've heard of General Smuts. He believed in separation. But what used to happen, there was a very active Afrikaans group called the Broederbond, who were very anti-black. And we used to meet on Sunday nights outside the City Hall. And we Springbok Legionnaires used to come there. We used to be attacked by the Afrikaners as well as by the police. So we suffered from both of them, because the police were always on their side at that stage.
Yeah. So when do you, while you're in the army, or during the Second World War, when do you start to really hear and have rumors confirmed about what's happening with the Jews in Europe? Like, already, not only from the German immigrants that come, but more as you're in an army now, I'm sure you're meeting people who are in Europe or in North Africa who have seen like, what's going on?
We were hearing rumours of what was going on, rumours of concentration camps, of mass deportations and that type of thing. And it was always very worrying. That is why we rejoiced on VE Day when Europe was finally, the Germans were finally conquered. And of course, a lot of it came out at the Nuremberg trial.
Yeah. Do you guys know of any of your relatives that are missing or?
No, I was really fortunate that way. A lot of people I know suffered personal family tragedies. I was really fortunate that my parents had come out early.
And their brothers and sisters and all?
Well, my brothers and sisters were born in
their brothers and sisters, yeah. Your uncles and aunts.
Right.
Yeah. Got out, yeah. So you spent another year in the army after the war's over. Is that correct?
No, 1946. When was
the war's over in Europe in May.
45.
May the 9th, 8th, 45.
45, right. So I came out in February 46.
Okay. You came out of the army, honorable discharge. What rank are you? Do you remember?
I was a sergeant at that stage. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And you are a sergeant. You are a radar specialist? Are you a radar, like what's your job?
Well, I came out with a certificate. I actually still have it. They were tested, I was tested and confirmed as a qualified radar tech.
So you're a qualified radar tech when you get out of the army. You're a sergeant, qualified.
Yeah. In those days, in our unit, you had to have a university degree. You automatically became an officer.
Yeah.
But I was still an undergraduate at that stage.
Okay. So, the army's done. We're done with the army. You get out of the army. Do you want to go back to school?
I'm back at university.
You're back at university. Okay. Same university?
Yes, I'm now doing my second year engineering.
Okay. Second year engineering.
Right.
But you never finished your first.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. Now, if I go back, I didn't join the army until I had completed my first year exams.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
No, I was in second year when I came back.
Okay.
And that is definite. And I'm sitting in class, and it happens to be the physics class with my friend Monty Goldberg next to me.
Monty?
Goldberg.
It's a good Jewish name.
And suddenly Monty disappears. I'm now talking about 1948.
Yeah. 48?
Yeah.
Or 46?
I'm sorry. No, 46, 47. I'm in South Africa. Let's see, let me work this out.
Yeah, no problem. Take your time.
Sorry.
Take your time.
I just want to recollect this. I did first year, because I did 2 degrees here.
Let's put it, let me try and help you.
Let me just sort this out. Are you switched off here?
It's running, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Let's think together. When you get out of the army in February 1946, you probably have to wait a few months until you can go back into the university because of the semesters.
No, we went straight in. that was the purpose. The reason I was able to get out was
go back
because
to
it starts in
university.
February. '46, I was in. Sorry, 46 I went back to first year apparently.
First
47,
year.
second year, right. '46 first year. 47 second year. I know I was in my second year in 48.
What's that, in 48?
I know that I was in my second year.
Okay.
No, I'd done my second year. I'd started third year. That's correct. Okay, I've got the story now. 47 second year. Right. 46 first year. 47 second year. 48 I started my third year.
Okay.
And I'm sitting next to Monty Goldberg. Why I'm mentioning him is because he suddenly disappears. This was around May, June. And I didn't know why. Then I got the call I volunteered to go to Israel at that stage because they were recruiting people to go to Israel. And then Maurice Ostroff disappears from the physics class. And I met up with Monty here. He was killed, he was a prisoner of war in Egypt, somebody. He was an aerial photographer here. So, that is correct. I was in the beginning of third year in 48.
Okay.
And the course was 4 years.
What course?
The engineering course.
Which you didn't finish.
No, I finished when I came back.
Yeah.
Right.
So what happened is, after the war, after the Second World War, you go back to school.
Right.
You're back to school. Are you living at home? Are you
living at home? Right.
Going to school? Everything okay with your family, with your brothers, your sisters? Are they married? You have nieces, nephews?
Yeah, my brothers got married. My sister got married.
Do you have a girlfriend? Are you dating anybody?
No.
No.
Not yet.
No. Are you?
Just lots of girlfriends, but no girlfriends.
Nothing serious.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing serious. Are you still active on campus? Is there any sort of Jewish club or that you belong to?
No, I was more active in the anti-apartheid movements. There were two. Okay. The university had a movement called FOPS, Federation of Progressive Students.
How is it called?
Federation of Progressive Students. FOPS, Federation of Progressive Students, which was established by Ruth First, who was the wife of the famous Joe Slover.
Sure.
This movement became banned, but we were very active in on the anti-apartheid protests, which we used to arrange.
Really?
Yeah.
So you became an activist?
Yeah, in my youth.
Yeah.
Not in a great, wonderful sense.
You probably went to demonstrations.
I was part of the movement.
I didn't say that you took up arms, but you know.
I was part of that movement, and we used to suffer quite a bit at the hands of the security police and the Ossewa Brandwacht, which was the other Afrikaans movement. Ossewa Brandwacht, if you'd like to jot that down.
Okay.
Meaning the ox wagon fire brigade.
Nice. And tell me, so you are in school, back at your engineering degree. You're trying to do your engineering degree. When do you recall the first time that you actually even think about? Okay, actually, let me go this way. the war's over. You're back at school. Everybody knows what happened in the Holocaust.
Right.
6 million Jews were murdered, slaughtered. And
Okay, I can tell you what motivated me there, because I remember, I'm talking around April, May 1948.
Okay, I want to start a little bit before that. I want to start, do you remember the 29th of November 1947 when the UN partitioned Palestine to a Jewish part?
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
When that partition resolution was passed, the late Rabbi Louis Rabinowitz, who you may have heard of, organized a mass meeting at Balfour Park. No, sorry, he organized it afterwards when the white paper came out after that.
Yeah, the white paper, yeah.
When the white paper came out...
No, wait, before we get to the white paper...
I remember the joy when the
November,
1947 partition resolution was passed, sure, absolutely. There was great joy there.
Did that help? Did you think then that you would be going to Palestine, or you had no idea then?
No.
What was the thing? What was the thing that made Maurice be like, I'm out of here?
I'll tell you exactly. One of the things that made an impression on me was the film Exodus. You know of it?
Well, I know that the film only came out in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw these pictures on TV, which we had in those days, and in the newspapers, and on the cinema news, of these dregs of humanity, Holocaust survivors who were crowded into ships holding 4 times as many people as they were built for, making their way all the way across the Mediterranean to Israel and being shipped back by the British. And these survivors who were turned back made such a deep impression on me that I felt, hey, my brothers, I've got to do something. And that is what actually made me want to come and participate in what was happening here. That I remember very clearly.
So it was the images that you were seeing?
These images, yes.
Of these half-skeletons, these people who were refugees. So it must have had a very strong impression on you.
There's a sequel to this, and I'm jumping years ahead now. During Israel's 50th, Joe may have told you the story, during Israel's 50th anniversary, a friend of mine who was a doctor came on one of the ships carrying all these refugees. He delivered a baby on the ship. Did Joe tell you about it?
No. Maybe he did, but continue.
I just can't think of the doctor's name for a moment, but I'll tell it to you shortly. He delivered a baby on the ship. During our Israel's 50th anniversary, we decided to look for this baby. And Joe, Wolf, and 2 others, Joe located him, living near Haifa. And the whole concept of this baby that was born in the direst circumstances, now living a life as a middle-class citizen in a free land, had a tremendous emotional effect on us.
This was in 1998?
Right.
Yeah, 1998, correct?
Yeah, and Joe will tell you a lot more about that particular story because he participated. He located this baby, who was now 50 years old, and he has his name. I think I recorded it in our book, South Africa's 800. Have you seen the book?
I have seen the book, of course.
I've recorded this baby's name.
Of course.
But just imagine the emotional thought of this.
It's amazing because people recall all these things of where they were when this happened and where they were when that happened, but what's interesting for me is the process.
Right.
How one
we'll go back to that now.
How a person is in one situation, he's studying, he's this, he's kind of planning out his future already, I mean,
right.
you're young, you're 22, 23, 24,
right.
You just spent 3 years in the army. It doesn't matter what you did in the army. If you spent 3 years in an army, you're not the same person that you were when you walked in there. The army is a life-changing experience. Right. And here you are at university, and it's 1947, and the UN partitions Palestine into two. And excuse my French, but all shit breaks loose, basically, and the unofficial part of the war starts.
Right.
The unofficial part. And basically, what I want to know is, do you remember the moment where you told your parents, or you...
No, I didn't tell my parents.
Who recruited you?
Israel sent somebody out to recruit, but also a chap. Have you heard the name Sami Weinstein?
No.
Sami Weinstein was one of the leaders in the South African community. And he basically organized the selection of volunteers who would be able to go to Israel. A lot more people volunteered than came.
Sure.
They did some training on a farm in Johannesburg.
Yeah, I need you just to sit still because you're always moving out of frame. Okay. Get comfortable. That's the most important thing. So, do you approach Sami Weinstein and you say, listen?
I approached Sami knowing that he was handling it, and I knew Sami well. And as soon as he saw the word radar, he said, you're on the list. And that was a magic word, because in Israel they had the elements of infantry and artillery and even of an air force. But the British would not employ Jews on radar while the British mandate was here. So they had no nucleus of radar at all. And that's why they were so anxious to get radar people there. Now, because my papers were marked radar, my papers were marked with this radar on it, they recruited a whole lot of chaps who arranged to travel to Palestine. We were told to meet at the airport, which was in Palmytfontein. And they took away our passports the night before, because they said, we'll tell you tomorrow where you're going.
So wait a minute.
The South African Zionist Federation did this. They were organising this through Sami. And they were arranging for us to go to different destinations. And they warned us, when you're on this Dakota, you don't know each other, you're just a crowd of tourists.
The Dakota's the plane?
Dakota aircraft, yeah. Right. The plane was owned by a Jewish company, Pan-African Air Charter, which was formed especially for this, owned by two brothers, Kauser. They had different surnames, Kauser and Kieser.
What was the name of the company?
Pan-African Air Charter, PAAC. I'll show you a picture of the aircraft in a moment. Pan-African Air Charter.
Air.
PAAC.
Sure. This was basically kind of like Air America in Vietnam. The CIA formed Air America, and they did all their private things. So this was not for a business. This was to get Jews. This was to get people into Palestine. Interesting. Pan-African Air Charter.
Now, on my aircraft...
But before you get on the aircraft, are you being trained for a while in South Africa? Are you being...
I wasn't, but they did have some training. They did have some.
You didn't do it?
No, I didn't.
They just told you you're leaving on this and this day?
Right.
And do you tell your parents that you're going to Palestine?
That was traumatic. I'd lost my dad by then. It was just my mother.
Okay, tell me. I didn't know that.
I wanted to go, and she begged me not to go. I said, but you've got 5 other children here. And she said, no, my little Maurice will kind of go. And I actually went to consult Rabbi Rabinovitz, who was living nearby, about whether I owed my duty to my mother or to what I felt was my duty to my country. And he said, well, you've got 5 brothers here, 3 brothers and 2 sisters here. Your duty is to go. So it was very much against my mother's wishes. And it hurt me as well, tremendously.
And did your brothers and sisters support you? Or were they...
I don't think I discussed it with them.
Yeah.
So we arrive at Palmytfontein Airport.
And where is this? Is in Johannesburg?
This is outside Johannesburg. It was before Jan Smuts. It was a small airport in those days. And the Federation, everything was done secretly, of course. They took away our passports the night before. We don't know why. And they said, tomorrow we'll tell you where you're going. Each one to a different destination. My destination was Rome. And most of the others were as well. But of that whole plane load, 3 of us went straight on from Rome the next day to Israel. The rest stayed in Rome, waiting for, and they came by ship later.
How did you come?
We flew straight from Rome to...
really? To Lod?
To Athens and then to Lod.
Really?
But it was me, there was a nurse, you know, who are on the priority list, and Moki Shachat, who was a trained artilleryman, a very well-known artilleryman. Oh no, there were 4 of us.
So you guys were like the VIPs of the group?
We were the people who were on their priority list, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate that I came straight here. The others stayed in Rome for quite a long time, including Joe. Joe's got pictures of when they were in Europe.
So Joe was with you on the plane?
No, he wasn't on my plane, but most of the others
were. Did you know Joe from those days? Or
no, I met him here when we were doing my book.
Yeah. So you leave, you fly from Johannesburg to Rome?
All right. Let me show you now the picture of that aircraft.
Okay, please.
Oh, it's disappeared.
Tell me what you're looking for.
I'm looking for the picture of the aircraft. Oh, here we are. That's the crew who brought us up.
Okay, can you hold it in front of you?
Well, don't take this.
Okay, okay, that's good, that's good. Perfect.
That's the crew of the aircraft that brought us up.
Okay.
And these are
I need you to hold it down. There you go.
And those are the 2 owners, the 2 brothers.
Okay. Who are the 2 brothers?
One was named Kiza and the other one Calvin.
Jewish boys?
2 Jewish guys, yeah.
And they formed, okay, and and these are the pilots?
Right.
Okay.
This is as we landed in Haifa.
Is that where you landed in Haifa?
Yeah.
Are you in this picture? No.
I took that picture, yeah.
You took the picture?
Yeah, these are all my pictures.
So what was the head of the company doing in Israel?
He came on the flight.
Him?
That's right, the 2 civilians,
him.
Right.
These 2 are brothers.
Right, and they're the names of the crew. Now that aircraft...
Okay, hold on. Yeah. Tell me about it.
Had the Israeli colours flag removed. They used it to bomb Damascus. It came back and then flew to South Africa.
Tell me that story again.
Smokey will have told you the story, I think.
No, Smokey didn't. So let's put the picture down, and then we'll continue. We'll put this right here.
That is the first elections in Israel.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll definitely get to that. Let's put this right here. So the aircraft. So you're okay. So wait a minute. So you're telling me that the aircraft. Wait a sec.
No, leave that story out.
Okay. So when you fly.
Yeah.
When you fly from Rome to Tel Aviv.
Right.
Where do you land from Rome? What day do you land in Israel or Palestine?
June 6th.
So the 6th of the 6th, 1948.
The British were still here.
Yeah, they were.
They hadn't left altogether.
Yeah.
A lot of them had left, but they hadn't all left.
Where did you land?
At Haifa.
There was an airport in Haifa?
There was an airport in Haifa. I don't think Lod was open in those days. No, they hadn't captured Lod yet.
So you arrive on the 6th of the 6th?
Right.
Isn't that during the first ceasefire?
Yes.
Isn't there a ceasefire at this time?
Yes. And we are met by, we now have British and Israeli immigration and customs there. So I get chatting to a British major. And he said, "What the hell are you guys doing here now?" I said, "Oh, we just tourists, we're passing through here." He said, "You're crazy to come here now." He says, "Look down at Haifa." He says, "That's where the Arabs have murdered the fucking Jews." He says, "We are leaving here." And he said, "Within weeks, the Jews are going to beg us to come back." It was a nice welcome.
Okay.
Our first night was spent at the old Technion, which was then housing dozens of refugees from Europe. We spent a night there, and then a bus took us through to Tel Aviv to a recruiting station. And we were told that if any British soldier stops us on the way, because the road between Haifa and Tel Aviv wasn't always open, said if any British soldiers board and they question you, pretend not to talk English.
Okay. So the next day you arrive until you take a bus?
Yeah. We were brought to... the recruiting station was in some school in Tel Aviv. I've got a picture.
It's okay. It's okay. We're going to do the pictures after. I want to get this all verbally right now. Yeah.
And from there, I was into Telodvinsky, which is now the hospital at
Tel HaShomer?
Some of the huts are still there. Those
Sure.
round huts are the ones that were originally there.
So what happens? You get there and you get to the. Let's put it this way: when you arrive in Haifa, are you given an Israeli identity number, or you're just in as a tourist?
Yeah, as a tourist.
As a tourist.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not an immigrant.
No, we're treated as tourists.
Okay.
By the then semi-customs or immigrants, whatever they were. But eventually we were given proper Teudat Zehut and so forth.
It took time though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this whole time, you know your purpose of coming to Israel. Your purpose is to help set up.
Right. From there, we were sent to Telodvinsky where we were housed, and then the next thing I found, I was sent to the Weizmann Institute.
To the Weizmann Institute, okay.
And there I met a few fellow South Africans from the same radar unit that I was in South Africa.
Oh, there were other Jews in your unit?
Yes, there were a lot of Jews in our unit. There was Sam Barron, Jack Siegel, Reuben Joffrey, all from South Africa, from the same unit, who had set up our particular radar unit, which was then called Squadron 505.
Okay. Okay, yes.
We were given the use of a laboratory at the Weizmann Institute to construct the first radar. I think this was probably the second because they'd done one before. We had nothing, we had no equipment to build, we knew nothing about it, we were only technicians, we weren't engineers. They brought us bombed out bits and pieces of aircraft, airborne radar equipment that they swiped from the British had abandoned. A lot of the stuff was blown up. They gave us these bits and pieces. And from that we constructed this very primitive radar, which by good luck, not intelligence or any real technical know-how, just by good luck, it worked.
So, let me get this straight.
I'll show you a picture
okay,
too.
No, wait a sec. We'll definitely get that. So they send you go to Televinsky. You get it into the army. Do they give you uniforms and everything?
No.
No. You're wearing civilian clothes. Why?
I don't think they had uniforms to give us. We got some later, but not then. Josh, let me show you the pictures. It'll guide you in your questions.
No, it's good. I think I want to look at the pictures after.
No, but I think these will guide you to ask questions.
No, I know the questions to ask. I'm good. I'm definitely good. You want to show them to me now? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now turn the camera off.
No, I need the camera on because...
No, I just want to show these to you as a guide, then afterwards you'll select what you want to see. Because they're not in any particular order at the moment.
Okay.
This is the first unit we constructed here.
Okay.
At the Weizmann Institute.
Hold on. What I could do is film it. Okay, hold on. Okay. So tell me what Tell me what this picture is that I'm looking at right now.
You're looking at a picture of the homemade unit we constructed at the Weizmann Institute using bits and pieces of scrap from airborne equipment, completely unsuitable for land-based that we were going to use. The people in the picture are Sam Barlin from South Africa, and the other two guys, if I remember, let me just look at the picture. Yes, the other two guys are from Kibbutz Chatzor.
Okay.
On Kibbutz Chatzor, they had a radio factory. And when the Egyptians were 4 kilometers away, they evacuated the children and the factory. And these guys set up the factory at the Weizmann Institute in the same lab where we were. And every day they used to hitchhike from Chatzor to Rehovot. They were given, it was a completely Hashomer Tzoer kibbutz, where nobody owned anything, so they would be given money for a bus, but if they didn't use it, they'd return the money, if they got a lift. And these blokes were geniuses. They really helped us a lot in figuring out how to do things. I used to go to the kibbutz with them at night because they had so few men there, they always wanted a bit of reinforcement. When I'll tell you another.
Hold on, let me sit down. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll reset up everything, and you'll tell me. There's actually a lot of things that I think we skipped that I want to talk to you about here.
Okay.
Hold on, this has to.
Ay, ay, ay.
Just a second, Morris. Just a second. Okay. So when you get to what's the situation in Palestine when you get to the Weizmann Institute? What's the military situation? What stays in your collective memory when you think back in the situation, the war, the economy, food? I mean, Tel Aviv is kind of normal, but
you know, I don't think we considered much except our immediate concerns, what we were busy with, because we were busy more than 8 hours a day on what we were doing. So
most of the radar experts were from South Africa?
I wouldn't say most, but a big proportion.
How many people were you in this unit?
I don't know in the total unit, because it grew after a while. But in this little group at the Weizmann Institute, we must have been about 10 or 12, most of whom were South Africans. But there were other parts of our unit in different parts of the country. Jack Siegel was busy planning a filter room. He was busy teaching operators.
What was your job?
Building the equipment, subsequently maintaining the equipment.
What was the situation with radars in Palestine at the time? What were they needed for, and where were they coming from? Were they junk left over from the British?
There was none. There were no existing stations, operating stations that we knew of. The British may have had, but they removed whatever they had. So we were left with this junk. I'll expand a bit later about the subsequent station that we built. But this particular one, when it was ready for erection, we took it to Haifa and we set it up next to the French convent. Do you know the French convent on the Carmel? The French convent was here, our station was right next door to it, and next door to us was the United Nations station. When we were erecting that antenna, of which there's a picture there, I was a radio ham, and I knew a lot about antennas. So because this was such low power, I constructed a huge Sturber array antenna. A friend of mine, Eli Israel, and I, who worked very closely together, built it. But when it came to erecting it, we couldn't find an electric motor to turn it.
Okay.
Now, this is quite an interesting story. It requires a special motor for turning
And this is all radars against airplanes, is that correct?
Yes.
Or submarines, or?
It could detect surface vessels as well, but it was actually land-based GCI, ground control interception. We couldn't find a motor to turn this huge antenna. So Ellie and I, who are still in contact, he's in Johannesburg, we found an old bicycle And he was a marvelous engineer. From this old bicycle, we constructed an apparatus so that using the pedals and the chain, so that the girls could turn the antenna by rotating the bicycle pedals.
The girls?
The girls who we trained afterwards, the operators. There were men as well, operators, but mainly we trained women to do it. And this actually worked. Now you can imagine the wire is connected from the radar to the antenna. You can't turn more than 360 degrees because the wire would become entangled. So you could turn 359 degrees and then you'd have to turn back. Now this primitive equipment of ours picked up several aircraft, including, it took part at a later stage, which I'll tell you about, in February '49, the shooting down of 5 Royal Air Force planes, British planes.
Okay.
And it was, by then we had several stations going, but this station participated in that.
So, wow, that's.
Do you know about those 5 British planes?
Yes, I do. Well, I'm going to have you talk about them also because it comes up a lot.
Now, by the way, I have a copy of Hansard. You know what is Hansard?
No.
Hansard is the minutes of the British Parliament, British House of Commons. And I have the actual debate that took place at the time of the shooting down of the aircraft, in which they virtually acknowledged that the RAF were taking these pictures and giving them to the Egyptians.
So tell me, the first radar that you guys the first radar that you guys assembled. So the Weizmann Institute, is that your home base?
No, that was where we're going to. Once we finished the job, we left there. But there had been one set constructed before us, which before I came, and which was running temporarily in Herzliya near the kibbutz here, Herzliya.
Mm-hmm.
Also homemade.
British?
No, homemade, Israeli made, before us.
Okay.
Before I came.
And what are your impressions? You get here, you immediately go right into work, you start working on radars, fixing them up, getting them functionable. Do you have any time at all to like enjoy something? See the country?
No, we didn't manage to do a lot of touring. No, except for my visits to regular to Yad Mordechai, to Chatzor. And my friend Eli and I acquired a motorcycle. We moved around a bit on the motorcycle.
Uh-huh.
But I think we were single-minded in what we were doing.
Was there so you're definitely behind the lines, working. You're not an infantry soldier, you're not a combat soldier. You're not even in the army yet. Are you in the army?
Yeah, I'm in the army.
You are in the army. You're
sure.
given a Mispar Ishi and everything?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yes.
Is that what they did at Machane Levinsky?
And we were getting £3 per month per man, perhaps.
Did you have to learn Hebrew? Did they speak to you in English?
No, it was all in English. In fact, the Air Force official language was English for a long time. We were part of the Air Force.
Right. Did you know David Makarov?
No.
Who came from, he was in Deciphers.
No.
No. What is, so the job that you did at the Weizmann Institute, once you finished that, do you have a log of operations that you guys did? Do you remember?
Yes, well,
okay.
As I said, we finished at the Weizmann. We set up the station in Haifa.
Haifa, next to?
Next to the Carmel Tzofati. the French convent.
Yeah.
And why I mention the French convent to you is because our power line, we got power from the French convent. The United Nations got power from the French convent, so their power line came through us to them. And this is a story that hasn't been published. When we used to get a important signal on our time base that we were tracking something, the time base would jump up and down. We get a lot of interference. And I couldn't figure this out until I realized that these guys next door were sending Morse code, and this was causing this interruption on our screen, the United Nations. So Ellie and I went downtown and we bought a big switch. And we came back, we dug up their cable, and I've got a picture of me digging it up. And we cut the cable, put the switch in, and whenever we got an important plot, we send somebody out, switch them off, and then we'd switch them on again. And they never discovered it.
Really?
Yeah.
So and that worked. It was practical.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But I'm not sure if I want to publish this.
Okay, that's fine.
I actually got a picture of myself digging that cable up.
Nice. So where are you stationed most of the time?
Well, I'm stationed in Haifa. When we finished that job, Ellie and I, this becomes interesting. Ellie and I got a message, report to Sarafand.
Where's Sarafand?
It's now Tzrifim.
Tzrifim.
Sarafand had been a big British base.
Yeah, yeah.
All this period while we were working, the Jews had captured Sarafand, and our unit was granted some space there to establish their base. The chief of our unit, by the way, was a chap by the name of Moshe Eitan,
okay,
from the States, professor. So Ellie and I got this message. We were real buddies, Eddie and I. We spent all our time together. Moshe, Ellie, report to Sarafan. We have a present for you. When we got there, they showed us the present. It was a big packing case marked food.
Food?
Yeah. And they said, open it. And we took the crowbars and we opened the thing. And inside we found an almost complete microwave radar from a torpedo boat that had been sent from the States. In those days, Teddy Kollek and the others were sending equipment illegally to Israel because there was a ban on exporting military equipment, so it was marked food. They had acquired this on the war store disposal.
So you
know, there was a big... this was a very important part of what happened in Israel, was all the illegal equipment, including aircraft that came from America. You've heard that story.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, this is one of the presents that came. We found this thing. And they said to me, there are 3 trailers there, British Army trailers. That's part of your present. We need a mobile radar. Get busy. Within a matter
First one in the country, is that correct?
Yeah, right. Within a month, Ellie and I had converted this thing into a mobile radar. Our central trailer was the actual operating room. The second one was our power station. One of our South African mechanics converted a lawnmower engine as a power supply for us. And in the other one we had our workshop. All these I've got pictures of here. And this we moved originally just outside Bat Yam.
Okay. So you built it in Tzrifim?
You're right.
Probably under camouflage and everything, and
Right.
yeah.
And between this station and the Haifa one, which was called Geffen, my station was called Geffen, it was the Haifa station, and by then they had another one at Givat Olga. This is between the three of us, we already had established, Jack Siegel had established a filter room. He had trained the girls as operators, because he had been an officer in our special signals unit. And we would send the information by radio or by telephone to the filter room, and they would of course do the plotting of where the positions are and notify the Air Force where to pick up the intruders. And it started working smoothly in those days, though primitive.
Wow. So that was the first mobile radar station?
Right. It was a converted microwave from a torpedo boat.
Now, so you're constantly moving around, is that correct? That's the impression that I get.
No, three
Haifa,
moves. Three moves.
Rehovot.
Haifa, Sarafand, well, Weizmann Institute, Haifa, Sarafand, and
Bat Yam. Mm-hmm. So you were in Bat Yam. You guys, is that where you guys located the mobile thing, the mobile
radar?
Radar. Now, most of the people that you're dealing with are Machal people. Is that correct?
The great majority. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
And mostly from South Africa.
We had one Russian.
A Russian?
Yes. And he had radar experience in Russia. And we had one Israeli, Aaron Buxman, who was in our unit, who lives in Tel Aviv. He's available if you want to speak to him. But the rest were South Africa and South Africa and the United States.
And at this time, is there any milestone things that are happening to you, your family, you here in Israel?
Yes.
Do you witness some historical events? Do you see?
Well, I was here when the Altalena landed.
Can we talk about that?
Yes, sure.
Can we?
I happened to be in Tel Aviv at the time.
Let's talk about that. Hold on.
This was the most desperate period in my life.
Okay, can you tell me more about it? Because this is like right after you got here.
Yeah.
If you got here on the 6th of June, I think the Altalena is like on the 18th or 19th.
We happened to come in on leave from
Weizmann Institute
to Tel Aviv, and we were invited. Was I alone or with somebody else? I was with one other guy, with Mort. There were two girls on the same truck where we got a lift. They offered us to come to our house to sleep over. She says, we've already got two people from the Altalena there. And no, she didn't have them yet. They came later. And on the seafront, there was the Palmach. A chap by the name of Professor, I'm sure you've heard his story. Professor at the Hebrew University passed away just recently. He was in the artillery, Machalnik, South African. He's Billy Daleski. His father was the chairman of the revisionists in South Africa, which were the supporters of Begin and the Gerut of Etzel. He was in the Palmach. He was in the little red house on the beach, and Rabin ordered him was it Rabin or Dayan? Rabin ordered him to fire on the ship, and he refused. He said, if you don't fire on the ship, you're going to be jailed. And he fired on the ship. He was an artillery man. And just recently he said, for the rest of his life, it haunted him. He wished he could erase it from his memory. He just passed away 2 years ago. Became a professor at Hebrew University.
He was South African.
Yeah, Billy Daleski. You must read up his story.
And where were you when this happened, when this day happened?
I was.
Do you remember?
I was in Tel Aviv at the Yarkon Hotel,
okay,
which was then the Air Force headquarters.
Did you hear? Would you guys hear stuff?
We heard. We were desperate. South African pilots were ordered to bomb the ship. And, Boris Sr. received an order to bomb the ship, and Boris was also a Beitarnik, a Gerutnik. And he said he doesn't know what he would have done, but he told them that he wasn't going to do it, and they cancelled the order. And he, to his dying day, he didn't know what he would have done had he been commanded to bomb it.
What do you remember when you're sitting in the Yarkon Hotel?
Just desperately puzzled, anguished, a Jew fighting Jew. He came here to fight the Arabs, not the Jews. And it just didn't make sense to us. Migdal probably told you about his
Sure.
Kvarvitkin.
Sure, he was a Kvarvitkin, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told me all about it, yeah. About blocking off the routes and... But he didn't look at it as tragically as you do. I mean, he just said, that's what I had to do, that's what I did, I just followed orders, you know. But I you know... How did you...
I was anguished.
At who?
Anguished at myself, because I couldn't understand what was going on. I didn't know where my loyalties lay. Yeah. I knew that the Irgun were doing a good job, an important job. I didn't agree with everything they did, but I think they served a very important function in forcing the British to leave. In 1946, I worked on a ship, just as an aside, and that was when they hanged the British sergeants.
Yeah.
And in Britain, they started burning synagogues. And I went on duty at Brixton Shul.
In South Africa?
On guard, no, in London.
When were you in London?
I happened to be in London. I worked on a ship for VAC work in 1946. And they were burning shuls, and they wrote on the walls, "You flog, we burn." When they flogged the British sergeants, if you remember, the Irgun had. I'm still puzzled by the part played by, for example, the Stern Group. Were they terrorists? And
were they?
Yes. But they believed in what they were doing. I often wish I was a zealot. I would like to be an extremist, because then you have no doubts. I'm continually weighing this against that. If I were an extremist or a zealot, I'd know that my way that I believe in is right. You have no doubts.
But you weren't an extremist. You don't look like you were an extremist.
Yeah, maybe. Was I an extremist? Could be.
I don't know, were you?
I don't think so. I think I weighed things before I did them.
What happened with the Al-Talina? What do you remember about? Did you guys go out to see what was happening?
No. After the event, I saw what was happening. I didn't participate in the battle. The Palmachniks were on the beachfront. And they too were puzzled by what they had to do.
Was that your first shock when you came here? Was that like the first slap in your face when you experienced this Altalena ordeal?
It was the biggest shock in my whole life. Because of the anguish of Jew against Jew. Was this Hanukkah all over? Was this the Maccabees and the pro-Greek priests? We're a strange nation.
Yes. What else do you remember about the Altalena?
Not very much apart from that.
You said that you knew something about somebody who stayed with...
Oh, well, these Yemenite girls who had given us a lift, they subsequently invited some of the survivors from the Altalena to stay with them. They're very hospitable people. We spent the one night with them.
Were they members of the Etzel, these two girls?
Big what?
Were these two Yemenite girls members of the Etzel?
I don't think so.
Of the Irgun?
I don't think so. But very poor and very hospitable people. We spent the night there, sleeping in the same room with mommy, daddy, and 3 kids.
Yeah.
And when I asked for the bathroom in the morning, they took me outside to the yard, where all the people in the apartments around shared one tap.
I'm sure you weren't used
in Jaffa.
to that.
Huh?
In Jaffa, where?
Yeah. This was near Jaffa.
Do you? So I want to get back to a second for the radars. So
okay.
When you were here in the War of 1948, you worked on 3 big radar projects. One in the Weizmann Institute was the first one that you worked on. Was that radar system? Where was it sent to? It was sent to Herzliya.
We erected that at Haifa.
No, you did the one at the Weizmann Institute,
which we erected in Haifa.
And then you took it up to Haifa.
Right.
Erected it up on the Carmel.
Right.
Then after that, you're sent to Tzrifin.
Right.
To open up the food package. And you build the first mobile radar system.
Right.
In the IDF probably.
Right.
And you take it to Bat Yam.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. I just want to make sure that I have everything. And then we talked about the Altalena.
Right.
Now, what else is going on around during the war that you can remember that is worth talking about, is worth mentioning, is historically challenged, or something that you want to talk about that hasn't been talked about in the history books? This is the time, this is the place.
I think the history books have dealt with all the important aspects. Except Benny Morris, who's distorted them.
Who's Benny Morris?
You haven't read any of Benny Morris?
No.
He was the first of the new historians.
Okay.
Who has dug for all our warts. He's written these books on the righteous refugees. You must read him.
Okay.
To get a distorted view of Israeli history.
And is he a Jew?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Professor at Ben Gurion University.
Okay. No, it's... Tell me about what happens after you guys prepare this mobile radar system in Bat Yam. What goes on next?
Well, vividly I remember the night that, as I mentioned, we had several incidents where we picked up planes, which turned out to be British planes, that were shot down, one over Tel Aviv. But the most memorable one was in February 49, when we located these 5 planes, 4 of whom were shot down by the Air Force and one by from the ground by a tank crew, I think.
Now, what were these planes? Who did they belong to?
What?
Who did these planes belong to?
The Royal Air Force, the British Royal Air Force.
Why were they flying over Israeli airspace?
That is the question. They had no right to be there. And that is why I mentioned, if you'd like to see it, I'll email you the minutes of the British Parliament when they discussed this whole business. It led to a huge furore.
Tell me about it.
What else can I tell you about it?
So were you there when the planes were detected?
No, we detected them at our station.
Were you there?
I was on the station.
You were on the station?
Yeah, absolutely. We then notified...
What date was this? February?
I can't tell you the precise date, but it was February 49.
February?
You'll find the complete story
February
in our book.
49. Okay. What happens at this incident? You're at your station, or you're called there to the radar station, and you see the planes.
I'm on the station. I'm in charge. I was the mufaked of the station. They call me down to say that they got something special. The chap on the radar screen that night, I remember, was the late Barney Dworsky. And of course we notified the filter room, who notified the Air Force. And of course, you've heard the amusing story, I'm sure Smokey told you, about we had a lot of non-Jewish pilots. You've heard about them. One of them, by the name of Rubiner, crash landed outside the beach at Michmoret, where the naval school is. He didn't know a word of Hebrew. And he was scared, as the Jews came down to meet him at the beach, he was scared they would assume he was Egyptian and lynch him. So he came out, he didn't know any Hebrew, so he came out shouting, "Gefilte fish, gefilte fish." This is a true story.
Yeah, that's all he knew. Where was this guy from?
From America.
From America, yeah.
A non-Jewish pilot. Yeah.
But this incident with the British, were they fighter planes?
Yes.
They were fighter planes.
But they were actually taking reconnaissance pictures.
And probably giving it to the Arabs.
Well, that was virtually admitted in the House of Commons.
And you saw this whole thing go down on the radar?
Yeah.
Must have felt good.
We enjoyed it. But now I'd like to come back to anti-Semitism in South Africa.
Okay, hold on. Okay, we're going to do that, and then we're going to get back to the end of the war, because I want to know about what happened with you at the end, towards the end of the war.
Well, I wasn't here for the end of the war. I left the end of February '49.
How come?
To go back to university.
Okay.
University opens in February. So now I land in South Africa. I go to university. Now I've done 2 years of engineering.
Mm-hmm.
To qualify, it required another 2 years. And I felt that I was getting on. I didn't want to spend another 2 years, so I wanted to change my course to pure science, carry over 2 subjects from pure science, physics and applied maths. So I went to the applied maths professor of the science department, Professor LeMay, and I told him, look, I've done 2 years of applied maths in engineering. I'd like to change to pure science. Will you admit me to the pure science department in applied maths? He said, where were you last year? I said, I was in Israel, sir. He said, what were you doing there? I said, I was in the Israeli army. He says, don't bother to apply. You can leave my room now. And he just wouldn't accept me.
Why?
So now I was stuck. I wanted to change to pure science, you see. So then I went to see the professor of physics, Taffy Evans, a Welshman. Same story. Can I change? I've got 2 years of physics behind me. Can I come into third year physics in the science department? He said, well, it's very difficult, my boy, he says, but we can try. He said, where were you last year? I said, I was in Israel. What were you doing there? I was in the Israel army. Wonderful, my boy, he said, you threw the British out. His reaction was completely different, being a Welshman. So now I had a problem. I needed a second major, so I went to the maths department and he accepted me. So I changed from engineering to pure science. I graduated in pure science, which I enjoyed. And then I decided to continue with engineering anyhow, so I went on and did another 2 years and got the engineering degree. And then much later I went and did a master's in engineering.
And how long did you live in how long did you live in South Africa for?
I came on Aliyah in 1980.
So you spent a long time
most
in
of my
South
life,
Africa.
yeah, right.
And were you active in the anti-apartheid movement, or were you?
After I got married, I became less active.
Yes.
When I had a family, I became a bit more cautious.
Yeah.
Well, I kept my head down.
Sure. But you were always very much against apartheid.
Absolutely, yeah. And as a member of the Chamber of Commerce and in other public spheres, I always spoke in favour of progressivism. I became the director of a public company.
What kind of company?
An industrial company with 12 subsidiaries called More Light Holding. It was a quoted company.
Okay.
And I was chairman of the Stainless Steel Fabricators Association in South Africa. We made stainless steel products. Why I mention this is because we had, South Africa then had 4 provinces, Transvaal, Natal, Cape Town. And we had members in each of the provinces. One of the members was an Indian who had a big factory in Durban. His name was Mudlia. At one of our meetings, we used to meet 3 times a year, the various manufacturers from different parts of the country. So on one meeting in Johannesburg, we arranged to meet at a hotel, the President's Hotel. In those days, because of apartheid, and we had an Indian accompanying us, we had to get permission from the police to serve liquor. That's how stupid the regulations were. And when we sat down to our meeting, the manager of the hotel came, apologized very profusely. He hadn't got the permission to serve liquor and he couldn't serve us because the Indian was with us. Full credit to my colleagues. We got up in protest and we walked out of the hotel, held our meeting in a restaurant. But that's how stupid the regulations were.
And why do you what makes you make Aliyah in 1980?
I'd made up my mind to do so a long time before, and my son was then 14. And I decided, he was then in standard 8. No, Danny was 13. And I decided that if I waited another year, he would have to finish his education in South Africa, and it was time to make the move. Because of him, we decided to go then.
Did you always have something in your heart for Israel?
Yes. I knew I was going to come back.
And did you come back to visit after the war?
Oh, I paid a few visits, yeah. Sure. Sure, I came as a tourist.
Yeah, as you did the first time. Right?
Right.
We're almost done.
I think we've done.
Yeah, I think so. I thought we were going to have 2 meetings, but you were extremely articulate.
On the contrary,
very is there anything that you want to say that, there's a camera in front of you right now, and we've been talking about your life and your past and your participation in the 1948 war. a very, very special and important part, which is the radars. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about, or you'd like to say something about how Israel is today, where you see it going? I'm talking more about in a society, in a social way, or is there anything that you want to say before we turn off the camera?
I'm very obsessed with the international campaign to delegitimize Israel, more so because of the participation of so many Zionists who are working against the interests of the country. I have been active in the media war for some 10 years. I have a website with about 1,200 articles in it. And I am extremely disappointed in our government. I find it frightening.
When you mean our government, you mean the Likud party or Netanyahu specifically? Or
all of them.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
I had high hopes for Mr. Lapid.
Rabin. Yeah.
Mr. Lapid.
Lapid.
Yeah,
oh,
Lapid.
Yeah.
I had high hopes for him.
Sure.
But he's been a complete
Oh,
disappointment.
completely.
And Naftali Bennett is a very capable guy, but I can't understand why, with all the cleverness that the Jews are supposed to have, they don't have a clue about public diplomacy. We've been an utter failure in public diplomacy. 1 year ago, July 30th, I wrote a letter to the PM on behalf of 2 organizations. I may tell you about the organizations first. Some years ago we formed an organization called Kochav. Have you heard of it? No. C-O-H-A-V. Look it up on the internet. Which is an umbrella organization for Hasbara groups around the world. We have approximately 100 members, each member being a group. And a group can be anything up to 500 to 1,000 members. So it has a very wide reach. And our biggest frustration is when we need information to answer the allegations against us, we can't get any cooperation from the Foreign Ministry or the IDF. Where they should be active doing what we are doing, they are so idle, it is frightening. We have also formed a group called Truth Be Told, TBT, which is in a short while, we're a very small group, we're 6 people. We've achieved quite a bit. Every year there is Israel Apartheid Week held in 130 countries around the world on all the campuses, where they promote boycotts, Israel Apartheid Week. A year ago, we decided to be proactive. We tied up with our friends in Cape Town, and on the Cape Town campus, where they had the Israel Apartheid Week, we established a big tent, which we called Abraham's Tent. We served falafel, hummus and china.
Where was this, in Cape Town?
In Cape Town.
You went down there? Yeah, you went down there?
We sent 5 Ethiopian students from the IDC.
Nice.
Beautiful people, these Ethiopian
Excellent.
students. Have you met any of them?
Of course.
They are such lovely people. And we sent them down as our representatives. And because they were black, they were able to establish contact with a lot of the boycotters and actually establish communication with them. It's the first time there was any proactive reaction to this. This year we sent 15 down, and they went to every campus in South Africa. So
you're still very active. You yourself.
I'm a founder member of this particular group.
Excellent. Okay. Well, listen. Morris, we're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna take a few. I want to take a few pictures. I want you to select a few pictures for me, and I'm gonna put them over there, and I'm gonna film them, and you're gonna tell me what they are. Is that okay? Hold on.
They're much better than all the shit I've been talking.
What's that?
The pictures are much better than all the shit I've been talking.
I want you to pick a few pictures for me.
But let me explain what they are, then you'll choose.
No.
If I tell you what it is, then you'll choose.
Okay.
This is that antenna being erected.
Wait a sec. Let me just go wide here.
Now you'll take the pictures afterwards.
Yeah, I will.
You're an obstinate bugger.
So let's see. So this is the picture.
While we were erecting that antenna that I told you about.
On the Carmel?
On the Carmel.
Okay, so we're going to take this out and hold on. I'm going to hold this right here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this. This is a very nice picture. So this picture that I'm filming right now, can you explain to me about it?
That is in the course of erecting the antenna at the Haifa station, which was rotated with bicycle pedals because we couldn't find a suitable electric motor.
Are you in this picture or you took it?
No, I took it.
Okay. You have another picture you want to show me?
Yeah.
It's a great picture. Great picture.
That's the mobile radar station with me on my motorbike.
Let's take that too. Here, let's put this back first. Okay, let's put this back where it belongs. It's right here.
All right, we can put them back afterwards.
No, I'll put them down.
That's the mobile radar station. And as I explained to you, that's where we had the actual working room.
Okay.
That was our power station, and that's the workshop.
So this
is the same thing with me and mine.
I want to get that one too, but hold on. Let's do how we say in Hebrew. Para. So this is the mobile radar station that you guys built.
Codenamed Geffen.
Geffen.
You've got a reflection there.
Yeah, no, now I got it. Now it's good. Excellent. So this is the three
trailers. British Army.
And how long would it take you guys to move them around from place to place?
Oh, we had to get trucks to tow them.
To tow them, huh?
Right.
Okay. And this, the last picture. This is a good one. This is a picture of Maurice in the IDF with his motorcycle. Probably the Army's motorcycle. Is that correct? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just put them aside and we'll put them together after. That's a group of South African pilots